Good morning, everybody. So, I have the pleasure of being with all of you today and with a wonderful person named Susanne Scott, who runs an organization in the UK that's called Parenting. Good morning, Susanne. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks. Hi. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Would you mind explaining who you are, a short introduction?
Yeah, sure. I am Susanne Scott. I always am very clear that I am just a mum. I'm not professional. I've not got a lanyard. I don't, have a degree. I'm a mum who has two children, one with special needs, lots of different special needs that we never understood for a long time. And I was also a foster carer for 7 years. And I now run the charity Trauma Informed Parenting, where I talk about my experience applying a trauma lens and how that's changed my life and how to do
Yeah.
that and how to apply.
So,
Teach people that.
you have a child with special needs?
Yes.
Somehow
My
I
daughter.
missed
Yeah, did you not know that? She
that.
was profoundly deaf and she had learning difficulties. We knew that there was something else going on, but we could never figure out what it was. Nobody was help us. There was no help. And for years we struggled. It was only when she became a teenager we started to wonder if she might be autistic. And we're convinced she has pathological demand avoidance. It's quite a new diagnosis. I don't know if you're aware of it. It's
Yes.
on the spectrum, but we
Yes.
can't get a diagnosis for that. We've given up fighting.
No, they won't give you a diagnosis for pathological demand avoidance. And
we used to joke that one day there would be a thing that would make sense, and when it did come out, we couldn't believe it. We never really thought they would figure it out, but it was as if they wrote the book about her,
Yeah, that's wow. Well, I'm glad that your child has you, in her corner. That's really nice to hear. That's not
Yeah.
exactly the experience that a lot of us have. Some of my listeners and myself also, we happen to be autistic, and that's not the experience that we had growing
No.
up at all in any form, shape, or way.
Well, sadly, it
Yeah.
wasn't my daughter's first experience. Now it's her experience, but we struggled. We did all the things that we thought were right, but nowhere, probably not helpful.
Well, and as a
Hindsight.
parent, I personally would absolutely not recommend, as a parent and as an autistic person, I would not recommend any type of ABA therapy. It is abuse in every shape or form. I don't care how they put it out there and project it in a sophisticated way as being actually beneficial. Teaching a neurodivergent person that they are wrong for being the way that they are is abuse.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm seeing how my child had experienced trauma because of the way she experienced the world, and how the way my whole family were experiencing trauma because of the experience for all of us. For her sister, it was traumatic as a child, growing up with a sister that has autism and is autistic and has all these behaviours, and a parent who's into psychotic screaming nutcase because she doesn't know what to do. And our relationship, my husband and I's relationship was in meltdown because we were both stressed out and overwhelmed and in trauma because of that.
Yeah.
And this knowledge has made such a difference to that.
So we were kind of talking a little bit about Ross Green and his parenting methods. Is it okay if we talk about that for a second?
Yeah. Yeah, I think his work's brilliant. Yeah.
Because he has a website, right? He has a website in addition to his books, and he has videos, and you can listen to the books on audio if you don't read, but they're very helpful for being able to communicate with your child or your children appropriately, I feel.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a big game changer when you start looking at your child as like understanding that, the behavior is the child communicating that they're in distress.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
Suzanne talks about the other side of it. That's part of the beautiful part of having her here is she talks about what it's like as a parent and what you can do, some of the things that she's done and experienced. So, anyways, would you like to talk about what is trauma-informed parenting in your mind?
Yes, yes. I mean, I could be here all day, but I'll try and be quick. Yeah, for me, when I started to learn about it, trauma-informed parenting, for me, it was starting to see my trauma, seeing what was coming up for me in these moments, seeing my fear that I was getting into a state of pure survival, and I was disconnecting from my child, my anyone around me. We were all getting into a state of stress and fear, and our trauma was triggered, and we were all disconnecting. And I couldn't possibly help my child in that state. Of course, I was shouting, screaming, lecturing, consequencing, trying to control, which was just adding more stress. So it's about
Mhm.
seeing that trauma lens. It's about putting that different lens on and seeing my trauma, seeing how that was making me respond a certain way, seeing that my child's behaviour was all coming from her trauma being triggered, and
Mhm.
learning what was going on in her brain and my brain. It's actually about learning how to be human that no one taught us.
Well,
Really being trauma informed.
many of us, even people outside of like Amish and Anabaptist communities, may have been raised in an environment where your emotions are stifled, and so
Mhm.
you're there's no safe space or no comfortable space for you to actually express your emotions. And so when you grow up like that, you don't ever learn emotional health and how to have healthy emotions. So what are some of the ways that you think like the principles
Yeah,
of like trauma informed parenting can help with that?
yeah. No, and that's across the board what you're saying. I mean, certainly my experience was not to express any negative emotion. That was a bad behaviour. You know, crying or whining or complaining or being angry. You know, being upset. I was no, don't be silly. Don't feel that way. You shouldn't feel that way. You don't know how lucky you are. All that stuff. We all heard it from generations and we've come from generations of people who suppressed their negative emotion and didn't know what to do with it and couldn't teach us what to do with it. And I did the same. And when I started recognizing that it was not letting my child express this and letting them start expressing it and recognizing how much it triggered me because I didn't know how to sit with my child and their negative emotion because I couldn't sit with my own. So
Hmm.
that's why that starts with us being able to allow myself to learn how to talk about my emotions, express my emotions in different ways so that I can show my child how to do that. Modeling it is so powerful. We don't always appreciate how much our children just learn from watching us.
Oh,
Being able to
yeah.
say, you know what, I'm really mad right now. I'm really angry, but I'm going to go. I'm going to breathe. And I'm going to calm down. And then
Hmm.
I'll come back and we'll talk about it. And I mean, rather than screaming my head off and teaching my children that's what you
Right.
do when you get stressed.
Right.
It's
Or
huge,
even like
massive change. Just
some
that.
sometimes one of the things that I do is I tell my child I need a timeout.
Mhm. Yeah. And the kids like, Mum needs a time out. My kids love
Hmm.
that. And none of
Uh,
my children come and tell me, you're stressed, Mum. You need to breathe.
hmm.
Whereas instead of me teaching them, they're actually highlighting it to me, which I'm so proud when they do that because I think, well, I must be doing something right if my kids can come to me and tell me
And
to calm down. Hmm.
they can express things without the fear of rejection and
Yeah,
fear
I would
of
have been mad at my kids before if they had dared to come and say that. I mean,
mhm,
how dare you? You're the one stressing me out. How dare you? You know, it would all be their fault. Blame, blame, blame.
mhm.
Because that's what's done to me.
Yeah. So learning to sit with your own emotions. Did I hear
Mhm.
you
And own
correctly?
them.
Like,
And yeah, take responsibility for that. Yeah. And it's not about blame either, because I think a lot of parents, there's a lot of blame, and that's not what trauma informed parenting is about, but about finding it in ourselves a place where we can take that responsibility without guilt,
mhm.
acknowledging it wasn't our fault because we're only doing what we learned from, generations before. So nobody told us. How could we be different?
Yeah.
It's not
And
about blame.
it's so like one of my other things is that I've had a lot of therapy. And one of my therapists would always say, like, you know, it's okay to be angry. Anger is a normal human emotion. It's okay to cry. Crying is a normal human emotion. These are all human emotions, and it's
Mhm.
okay to express those emotions. And if you don't have words for it, sometimes you can find other ways to express that. But at the bottom line is what I hear you saying is that when you find a way to express your own emotions and sit with them when they're uncomfortable, then you find a way to be present for your children through their emotions,
Yeah.
even if they are uncomfortable. And then you also get to sit with them through their joy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's helping them find solutions to come through it as well. It's a lot of the raw screen stuff, isn't it? About helping them become problem solvers rather than us coming in and fixing all the time, making it go
Yeah.
away. That just comes from our own need to shut it down because it's triggering us. When we try and
Hmm.
calm our child down, it's not because we want to stop feeling the way we're feeling by their distress. So if we
Hmm.
can actually be more comfortable in their distress and sit with them and not fix,
Hmm.
it's really hard as a parent because you want to fix, to not fix.
Hmm.
It really takes practice, but it's so powerful to just be with them in it and just sit there and acknowledge how they feel, witness how they feel, validate it, and
Hmm.
not move to fix it.
And
It's
I
not
don't
easy.
think you're talking about like small babies in this context, like what you're talking about. Like
You
don't sit
obviously
there
would
and
say
let your
that.
babies cry and cry and
We
cry.
soothe them, yeah. But
Yeah,
there's a time,
soothe them.
yeah, yeah, you still need to go. And actually, we talk a lot about the regressed state any child goes into when they're stressed out. An older child regresses back to that younger child.
Hmm.
So the first thing we always do when it's calm and it's safe to do so is to come and meet that regressed child in any time, any moment. My big 15-year-old could be a 2-year-old in that moment and needs that rock and needs that soothing if they will
Hmm.
accept it. You'd be amazed
Hmm.
how often kids want that and need that met again and again and again. And then we talk about, right, well, what could we have done differently there? What on earth's going on that you'd be so stressed? And let them.
Hmm.
So soothe, I would
And
probably soothe first before.
often often the as your child grows and matures, like when you involve them in conversation where you're seeking to find answers, they're often able to verbalize things that would really
Mhm.
have help for the future for that same situation. And so
Yeah.
rather than it being a situation where you, for example, in our culture, they would just say, well, spare the rod and spoil the child, and you're just not spanking that child enough, all of that. Like, rather than saying all of that, like, you're meeting your child where they're at, but you're also teaching your child how to make decisions and critical thinking about
Yeah.
how they can better navigate the world, and helping them find ways to navigate the world in a way that is okay for them. Oh, good morning, Sarah.
Hi there.
Yeah.
But no,
Don't
yeah,
you think?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And I when my wee guy first started, I started applying this with my foster child, and he couldn't even begin to try and problem solve because his brain was just so shut down and trauma re-triggered to eventually got to the point where he was so brilliant at putting into words what was going on inside his brain. You talk about the volcano erupting and how he couldn't hear the words because his brain was too full, and he could calm down. And he came up with the most amazing ideas on how we could help him. We asked him, what do
Hmm.
you think we can do? How can we help you? How can we work this out together? And helped him understand what was going on in his brain, and that there was nothing wrong with him. This was a normal reaction to what he'd experienced, and so much trauma that his brain was just only into that overreactive fear state. And
Hmm.
when he understood that, he realised there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not a bad boy. I've been told this, that I've been something wrong. What's wrong with you? Why are you acting this way? He didn't know why. And then he understood why, and he became a wee problem solver at figuring out what he could do. So it's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, you're enabling them and actually giving them skills for life, because life is 50% negative and 50% positive. We always want positive all the time, and that's not realistic. Imagine if we had the skills to go through life and actually manage those negative emotions instead of running from them all the time, trying to push them away.
Oh, that would be amazing, wouldn't it now?
Yeah, yeah. Sort of buffering it with
Just
all the things they use.
right. And I personally think that, like, when you've experienced all of this trauma and then you start parenting your children in a way where you're teaching them the skills to navigate those emotions as a child rather than them growing up and not knowing and then trying to reframe that as an adult to be able to manage those emotions or even sit with your own uncomfortable emotions. That's a really big difference.
It's huge. But there was so little, we have so little vocabulary around our emotions. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Brene Brown. Her work is amazing.
Oh, I love Brené Brown.
Oh, her new book
Her
is blowing my mind right now.
I
Atlas
love
of the
her,
Heart.
she's so great.
She's my hero, and she's so right. She talks about all the words we don't use. We don't
Mhm,
use the right words when we talk about emotions. We don't know what to call them. We don't know how to communicate how we feel. And it's
mhm.
about how we teach our children to be better at that and have those skills by doing it ourselves.
Well, I actually have a question, okay? So, speaking of, like, emotions, okay? So, a while ago, somebody had I had been talking about this whole, like, tell your parent they're tell your children they're autistic. If they have a diagnosis, it can help them understand why they are the way they are. And trust me, we all know, even if we're not diagnosed as children.
Mm-hmm.
I was late diagnosed as an adult, and I know, and the words that I would use around describing that experience of being in school with my peers would be isolating, alienating, rejection, just that's about it. That's the only
Mm-hmm.
words I have. So it's interesting when you talk about we don't use all the right words because we don't even there's so many more words, but I can't even
We
begin
don't
to
have them.
describe it further than
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, English is my second language, so that's a little bit
Ah,
interesting too.
yeah, good for you.
Yeah,
I struggle with English, and I'm English.
yeah,
Yeah, I love that. Yes, so true. 50% is the world is negative and
yes.
constant. Yeah, mm-hmm. So true.
You know, but here's another thing. Speaking of like the world is 50-50 negative, is like sometimes um I about maybe 12 years ago, I started looking at each day as like this brand new piece of paper. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
it's a nice way to think.
it's like a brand new piece of paper. And if I write on the paper and burn it, that's okay. But I made that decision.
Mm-hmm. Draw a line under it. Move on.
If I
Yeah.
paint a beautiful picture or I draw a beautiful picture on it, again, it's okay, but I get to decide what I do with each and every single day, and sometimes it's every moment is like that.
Mm-hmm. No, that's
Um,
so true.
I think it can be very helpful. So, do you have a list of like core principles of trauma informed parenting?
I don't know if I've got a specific list, but certainly there's some things that are the fundamental in it. Definitely seeing that my child is not choosing to do these things, has no control whatsoever over their behaviour, because we so often set kids up to fail and tell them you have to behave, you have to be good to expect this behaviour of you, and then you're not going to get this and this and this if you don't behave. And we're doing that, and we now know they can't help it, especially kids that are neurotypical, can't, sorry, neurodiverse, did I say?
Yes,
They
yes.
can't,
I was going to say.
actually, all kids, but I got the wrong one there. Yeah, yeah, they can't help it. They're not choosing it. They don't want to be doing it. They don't know why. As the stress comes in and understanding the brain science that the brain shuts down and they don't have the ability to choose. Their brain is completely shut down. And that my brain is shut down and that I'm disconnected. And it's understanding what's going on in our brains is so, so huge. But also that there's these two states that we can be in. This is kind of the core of the trauma informed understanding, is that we can either be in an open, connected state, which is a love state, or we
Mhm.
can be in a shutdown fear state, which is a state of survival. We are never in both at any time. We're
Mhm.
always in one of these. So the minute stress comes in, we shut down and we disconnect. Our children shut down and disconnect. They sense our stress, we sense their stress. We all disconnect. Our husbands, our partners, our children, our
Everybody.
colleagues, we're all shut
Yes.
down. Everyone's, and it made so much sense to me when I understood this, because I could see it all the time in my life when I could think somebody was wonderful and then I could hate them. think they were the enemy, and then I could think they were great a week later because I was going into this shutdown fear state, this disconnect, and this open, connected
Mhm.
state. And seeing our fear and seeing what that does to us and seeing our child's fear underneath that behavior, when we can start to see that's the trauma lens, and we can start to see the fear and the stress
Mhm.
in everyone around us, we will see them very differently.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
Once
seeing that
you
it triggers our fear, their child's behavior triggers our fear,
Oh,
and we
yeah.
can't help a child when we're in that state.
Oh,
We're
yeah,
disconnected.
absolutely. And the other thing is sometimes emotions are kind of, contagious or, like, if
Mm.
somebody comes in and they're in a bad mood, like,
Mm.
that's gonna sometimes go around a little bit
Yeah,
because they might
we'll see
be a
what's
little
wrong with
short.
you.
Like,
Mm.
yeah, like,
And
it's
everyone's fine till you came in that mood.
Mhm. Well, I'm gonna say this. Good morning, Katrina.
Hi guys, folk joining us.
Yeah. Um,
But yeah,
anyways,
that
so go ahead.
sorry. No, we talk a lot about that in the workshops about how just being in relationship with our children, we feed off each other's energy. And if we can be stressed about something that's got nothing to do with our kids, they're going to sense that and they're going to start to misbehave. That's where their behavior comes from, is their stress that they often feel from us. And then we feel our stress from them, from their behaviors, and then we escalate our stress, they escalate their stress. And the stress just escalates and escalates and escalates until we're all in a state of absolute shutdown, meltdown, yelling,
So
screaming.
so
It's
do
a
you have
cycle.
any tips for parents to, like, if you catch
Sure, yeah,
yourself
that's what it's all about. It's just
aware
like,
of
what do
like
we
that?
do? Yeah. Well, the first thing, the best thing I ever learned was to breathe. It's so simple, it almost seems too easy. But by breathing, stopping and learning how to really do calm breathing, triggers my brain back online. It helps me to think clearly. It helps me to regulate. It helps me to see what's really going on in the moment because my brain's shut down and it's went into a fear state and it's telling me that the end of the world is about to come if I do not stop this behavior. It's triggering me into all my own generational patterns of things my mom said to me. And those words come out my mouth I didn't even mean to say,
Oh,
that she
no.
would have said. And I'd channel
Oh,
her.
no. You wanna
And you're
hear a
like,
fun
ah,
fact? You wanna hear a fun fact? So
yeah,
for me, one of my core parenting things that I do is if I ever start feeling like my egg donor, my mother, is coming out of my mouth or even in my thoughts, that's a big sign I need to walk away. I need to calm myself, however long it takes. I
you're
am
triggered.
not
Yeah.
engaging my child because I will never be that woman.
That's
My
such
child
great insight,
deserves
is to
better.
know that. Yeah, that's exactly right. You're triggered. That's a sign that you're triggered, isn't it? I'm not making any sense right now, and I'm not going to do this. But that's
Uh-huh.
great. So many of us don't have that insight. I didn't have that insight for a long, long time until I learned this. I was just become my mum.
Lots of therapy. Don't even ask. I think my therapist goes to see the therapist. I like to imagine that when I get done with my therapist goes to see their therapist
Needs to go and get
immediately.
someone to
Like,
help.
they have a scheduled session because
How
it's that
many
bad.
therapists does it go down?
Yeah.
Oh, I know. Just being a human being is such a tricky thing, and then we didn't know that it's just part of being human. We're not doing
Yeah.
anything wrong. We just didn't know that
It
this happens in our brain. And what happens also is when we're triggered, it triggers all our trauma, and we're back in that moment. Because when
mhm.
our children are triggered, they're believing that that worst thing that ever happened to them is about to happen again, and they're back in that original fear. But so are we. So
Mhm.
that's why we're all so crazy. We're all so stressed. None of us are making any sense. Our brain is running away with
Right.
us, telling us about all the terrible things that could happen, that probably won't ever happen. We spend so much time in that place in our brain, and we're not disconnected. We're not connected. We're not in the moment.
Well, here's another thing that I've often used is, like, the 5 have you heard of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1?
Is it
Like
a breathing technique? Is it?
It's like 5 things you can see or whatever.
Yes,
It's like
the mindfulness
yeah,
technique.
it's a thing
I
for,
have
like,
heard of it.
anxiety, but it's
Yeah,
one of those
yeah.
things that helps
5
bring me
things you
back to
see,
the
4 things you
present.
touch and all that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't personally find that helps me. I don't know why. I think everyone's different. What works for one
right.
might not work for another. I just didn't
But
find that really effective,
and
but
so
some people do.
but here's the thing, is the beautiful thing is just talking about some of the different options can give people ideas
Yeah, they're
on
not all.
what they want to try, and then they can go figure out what works for them.
Yeah, yeah. It's trying it all and seeing what does the job, isn't it? I
Yeah.
definitely found the breathing, stopping talking. It's just I was always nagging, yelling, lecturing, jumping in, adding my stress. So if I just stop and zip it and breathe and remind myself no one's going to die, it's not the end of the world, that helps me to regulate. And the more I've done it, the better I've become at it, the more effective it is each time. Get stronger, the ability to not take it personally, remind myself my child's in fear, my child's not doing this on purpose,
Mhm.
and just get my brain back online before I even try and do anything in the situation. Like you say, take a time out for myself
Mhm.
so that I can do that. Sometimes I
Well,
might have to do that, sitting there in the middle of
so you can re-regulate. So your heart rate can
it. Yeah,
calm
but
down, you can.
yeah, because it's not just your heart rate though. This is what blew my mind when I learned that when I breathe, oh, okay, when I breathe, it triggers a thing called oxytocin in my brain,
Mhm.
and that's what calms all that stress hormone down. And when I trigger my oxytocin, it triggers my child's oxytocin because we're in connection and we're in relationships. So it's just my child being around me while I'm triggering my oxytocin automatically triggers that in them, and that's what helps us to feel safe and come
Yeah.
back into connection again. And it brings all that prefrontal cortex back online so that we can start to think clearly. So just doing nothing and breathing is so powerful. Just it'll help our children too. Just by breathing and sitting in amongst the chaos
Yeah.
and just do say nothing and breathe is so powerful to see that my child will just start to calm. They'll move in closer bit by bit, and then it eventually gets to a place where we can soothe and we can talk. In my household, it was continuous. What if?
What if? Wow. Yeah.
So they would
What
say to
if?
you, "What if?"
What if? What if this or what if that? Like, what if there's
So it was like a threat then.
yes. Yes. From the description, um, it says growing up in my house, hold it was a continuous what if from the parents or older siblings. It was a fear tactic that they used to get us to listen.
Wow, yeah. But
Yeah.
see, for me, seeing that my parents, although it was, everyone's different, but although it wasn't
Mhm.
great, they didn't know that it wasn't great. They thought it was the right thing to do, and they thought they were being good parents. They loved us, but they were doing all these things with fear and control because they were parented with fear and control, and because they were scared, and they went into shutdown, and they reverted back into all of their old parenting. And there's a lot of forgiveness I think we need to find, which is not easy. More therapy.
Mm, well,
They didn't have this information.
um,
I know.
well,
It's
my
definitely there for
parents
them.
may not have had this information, but all I can say is this, is there are some things so vile and terrible that you don't have to
Yeah,
forgive them ever.
no.
So,
Yeah, but
it's
there's a
forgiveness
big
is a
difference
personal
between,
choice.
yeah, and I found that holding on to resentment is only affecting me. It's not affecting them, and that's affecting my future generations, and it's affecting my. It was coming up for me all that resentment and anger that I had, not towards I had other issues and other traumas, so I had to do a lot of forgiving on that and understanding where it came from, not making it okay because I was keeping that resentment in within me and it was affecting me every day.
Well, well,
I
are you?
didn't tell them they were forgiven. I didn't go
Did
say
you?
you're forgiven, but I worked on that within myself. But it's a personal journey, isn't it? You've got to do what's right
Well,
for
you
you.
have to walk your own healing journey, right? But also, like in our culture, forgive is just like literally, it's a triggering word probably for a lot
So
of
it
my
means something
audience.
very different. Yeah, no, I
Because it
understand
means something very different. It's indicative of the culture itself, which sits there and covers up child abuse and child sexual abuse
that.
and child
Yeah,
beatings and all kinds of things. So whenever those things happen, it's generally approached with "you must forgive," and then there's no time or even space or any place for you to safely process what happened or what the trauma was. Rather, it's just demanded that you must forgive, and to forgive is to you never think of it again, you never speak of it again, etc. Like there's no nothing. It's like a complete victim blaming and denial state. So I probably wouldn't say forgive to my
But that
audience.
isn't that interesting how it's back to vocabulary again and how what words we use? Because that is not in
Hmm.
my book, forgiveness. That isn't forgive. That's not what forgiveness means.
Thank
But you've
you.
been brought up with that belief that
Hmm.
that's what forgiveness is, and it's not. That's not forgiveness. I think if you looked up in the dictionary, I don't think that is what it would say.
It's
But
not.
it's how you're belief brought up to believe that, isn't it?
But also it's indicative of like one, like English is a second language. Two, like I've always said this is when you start talking to Amish and Anabaptist plain people, like, we speak English in a whole different way. Because when I say forgive, there's like, one thing that you would think, but if we were to say that to like somebody who's still inside of the community or somebody who recently got out, that might mean like a whole other thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Yeah.
could be very,
It's what we make it mean, isn't it? Mm-hmm.
mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose it's just finding a way to move past it, really, so that it's
Yeah,
not coming up, isn't it? So whatever word you want to give it, it's irrelevant. It's just doing that emotional work ourselves, which a lot
right.
of you obviously done.
It's finding a way. I think for me, like some of it is finding a way to exist and be okay and walk with all of the things that happened, but continuing to live in the present, being present in this moment, and finding a way to be the best parent that I can be. Like that's really my goal, one of my big goals.
Yeah, definitely.
Uh,
No, we got it.
we got it, Sarah. We got you. And I want to say, like, if any of you have questions, please feel free to write them in the comments. Um, it I think it's really important to have these discussions about parenting and the generational trauma, because for us, like, a lot of the trauma comes from generations, like over, like, yeah, very much.
Generation after generation after
Yeah,
generation. Yeah. And then
yeah.
we talk about the workshops as well about that generational trauma that's in our DNA.
Hmm.
That's your great grandparents, and there sometimes it can come down 7 generations. So what your parents experienced and what their parents experienced is part of us.
Hmm.
It's not just what we saw and what we experienced ourselves. It's still in us. It's still been triggered. We've been triggered into all our parents' trauma and our grandparents' trauma as well. If you've got a lot of that in your background, so that's a lot to think about, isn't it? To think that we carry that in us.
It's a lot to walk with, and it's a lot to find a way forward from all of that. It really
Yeah.
is.
And this generation, we're trying to make that change so that we don't bring that forward into our
Right.
future generations.
Which is why when you talk to your kids and you engage your kids and you involve your kids in like making decisions and problem solving, and you teach them critical thinking of like how to problem solve the things that they're navigating, what happens? What happens? They learn.
Yeah, it's okay. It's safe. Yeah.
Yeah. And they
And when
learn
we
to be
don't
able
push
to
it down,
express.
yeah,
Yeah.
they
They
get it
they
out.
learn they learn to express themselves,
Hmm.
and they learn
And we
to
don't,
navigate.
yeah, when we don't push all that down, it doesn't become behaviours. It's when we push it down and we don't express it, we don't process it, we don't understand it, and we don't get an outlet for it. That's where the behaviours come from. Is that
So
push down negative emotion?
would you say it's kind of like the thing that I say, which is when you don't deal with the the feelings and emotions that you're having, it will find a way to come out,
Mm,
and you
it's
may
coming out
not
worse
always
later.
like
Yeah,
it.
yeah, absolutely.
So
Comes out later.
You have to find an outlet,
And it
or
doesn't have
it'll.
to be a verbal outlet. It can be, like you said, it can be a creative outlet. It can
Mhm.
be drawing, painting, singing, jumping, dancing, running, anything. And it can be for you and it can be for your kids. I love going to the golf range and smashing those golf balls one after the other. I found that so therapeutic when I'm on a really bad day. And it's
You know
just
what
like
I
one
really
after the
like?
other. It's great. It's what works for you.
They there's there's this whole place called, the Smash It, Break It room.
Yeah, we're
Have you
just
ever
starting to
heard of
get them. You
those?
guys have had them for longer than us. Yeah, we're called Wreck-It rooms here.
Yeah. You go
We
there
look
and you
great.
pick your weapon and you
All
get
your
to
gear on,
smash
all your
things.
protective gear. It's a
It's a
need.
really good outlet.
It's a need, not it's a need we have, and we're starting to recognise that. Ours aren't as good as yours. Your guys look like they have like all these furniture and TVs you can smash, whereas ours are just axes that you can throw at a board, which is not quite as good, but it's a good start.
It is a good start. No, no, I've
Mhm.
went to the one that's real close by, and there's like I got the pleasure of smashing a dresser. It was really like stressful time in my life. It was so fantastic.
Does it not feel amazing? Yeah, and you gave yourself
Yes,
permission. Yeah, yeah.
you give
Even just
yourself permission.
screaming and getting it out. We go
Hmm.
and scream together. Me and my kids will get in the car. We'll drive up the wee kind of quiet roads and put the music on and say, right, go for it. And we scream or really scream. And I'll say, oh, that's rubbish. You come on, you can do better than that. And give them permission to let it out.
Yeah,
Sometimes I might even let them swear, say 10 swear words, get them out. If I can
so
tell they're getting stressed and it's all bubbling under the surface.
yeah, and it's a
Their
way.
swear words even, they aren't even that bad sometimes, it's just kid stuff.
It's just
But,
kid stuff. But no, it's really, really healthy to find a way, find an outlet for emotions and do it
yeah,
in a way that isn't harming other people, which
yeah.
is like it's interesting you mentioned the car because like I do that too. Sometimes I scream in my
Yeah,
car.
get it out.
I
My wee
I,
guys
I
found it helped them to draw them, put them on paper, because you tap into the subconscious a bit more when you use like, art and creativity, and you can bring out things that you maybe didn't even know yourself that you
mhm,
were going on inside your brain.
mhm.
Journaling, things like that, really, really good. Just doing a
Yeah.
thought download and all that. Just the words that make no sense, just putting them all on a paper and seeing them in front of you.
Sometimes just scribbling on a paper too. Not even
Sure.
like
Yeah.
yeah, like the
Rip it
you
up,
know,
throw it in the bin. Yeah.
mhm.
Hmm.
Just finding a way to express emotions. So I guess my last question is do you have any specific tips like you'd like to share really about like
Mm.
how to respond when a child is in distress?
Well, definitely what I said, breathe. Stop and breathe. Just take a minute. Don't say anything. Breathe. Listen. Also, it's about getting into that state of regulation. So being in a state of regulation does not mean that you're calm all the time. It means you
Mhm.
can have all your emotion and it doesn't carry off with, you're not getting crazy. So you can
It's
recognize I'm really stressed. I'm really scared right now. I'm really angry right now. But just by saying it and acknowledging it will help you be regulated. Turns your brain back on. It helps you get this bit thinking again. So even just say, go to the bathroom. I'll be back in a minute. Do my breathing. I'm really stressed. I'm really scared. And it's in through your nose and really slowly out through your mouth. 3 to 10 slow, deep breaths. I sometimes do more than 10. Keep doing it and get yourself calm before you come back. And then when you do come back, sometimes it's just listen. Often we don't listen because we're too busy trying to come in and stop it and shut it down because we're scared of all the things that are going to happen because our brain's telling us the end of the world's going to come. Tell
mhm.
yourself no one's going to die. It's okay. And listen. And often my kids, I don't know about you, but they might be saying, I hate you. You're fat and you're ugly. You're bad to me, and I'm like usually jumping in trying to stop that. And now I can say, yeah, I can hear you're really mad at me right now. I can hear that you're really, really angry, and that's okay.
Have you
And
ever
just let
thanked
it.
your kids for expressing their
Yeah,
emotions
that's
and
so
using
powerful. Thank you for being able
yeah.
to come and tell me that. Yeah, that's so powerful, isn't it?
I'm so I'm so glad that you feel safe to share that with me.
Mhm. Mhm.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mhm. And it encourages them to do that again, doesn't it? And they probably won't get as escalated because they'll feel safer sooner to come. And it's
Mhm.
up there with taking the blame as well. You know, we make it my fault often when something kicks in. Isn't It's my not my fault. My child's upset, but I'll take the blame because it's the fault of the trauma. It's not my child's fault. The trauma. It's not my fault. It's the trauma's fault. And to say I'm really sorry, I didn't understand that. It was my fault. I should have understood. I should have appreciated how hard this would be. That's my fault. And that way teaches my child that it's okay to take responsibility. They learn by seeing us do that. And eventually what happens is my child wants to, and they go, no, 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 it was me. And I say, no, it was me. And they go, no, it was me, no, it was me. But they
Mhm.
start to, and sometimes eventually we might both say, you know, we both didn't manage that very well, did we? We both got really stressed. And we both can
Mhm.
take a bit of blame, not by making them feel they're to fault, just by showing them how we do that. But that goes
Being
kind of hand
there.
in hand with that, saying thank you for coming and telling me that I was out of order, or thank you for coming and telling me how you feel,
Um,
even if they've yelled at me.
so I guess like what I'm hearing you say is like kind of like being a partner with your child of
Yeah.
like, you're hearing your child, first listening to hear, right?
Hmm.
Listening to hear rather than listening to respond. If you find
Exactly.
yourself
Yeah.
formulating an answer before your child has even begun to finish speaking their sentence, you are
You're not
listening
listening.
to respond, and you're not hearing what you might miss something very, very important, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And
And being
then,
able to say, I can see that you're really scared. I can see that you're really unhappy. You might not see anything to be scared of because they're safe. You know they're safe, but they don't feel safe.
hmm
So acknowledging that you don't feel safe right now, that must be really hard for you. And not jumping into, but you're okay. It's okay.
right.
You know, we are safe. Because that'll come later once we soothe and we calm and we reconnect.
hmm
Then we can
And
talk about that. But first we have to acknowledge what they're going through, what they're
well,
actually feeling. Because actually it's children don't want us to fix. They actually just need us to listen and witness their experience and not fix. We always jump to fix, don't we?
yeah, we're fixers, aren't we? But you can't
That's
fix
not what they need.
everything.
It's
Can't
not what they
fix
need to
everything.
learn anything, do they?
No, children really, really, I think, want us to be present for them, and they want to know that as their parent, as their caregiver, they want to know that you're in their corner.
Mhm. It's us and them against the trauma. It's not us
Yes.
against them.
It's not
We're in
us
it
against
together.
them and the trauma against them and then the neurodivergence with them and like no, it's us and them. They want to know that we are a team, that we are here for you, that we love you and we're always going to love you. They want
Yeah.
to know that we're not going to disown them or something like that.
They're always looking for our approval, aren't they? And
Yes.
and I think the power I couldn't have foreseen the power in when I'm trying to get my child to do something that they need to do and they won't do
Mhm.
it because they're stressed. I now see that it's because they're stressed, they're overwhelmed, they can't cope with the transition. And I'm coming in with my stress and my control and my fear. When I can stop and actually just say, wow, it's really hard, isn't it? How does it make me feel? And let's talk about let's scream and let's get it out. Then they want to do the thing. It's amazing how they want to do the thing. It's
Mhm.
not that it's getting past that and letting them express it and feel connected that's going to help them to do the thing that you're trying to get them to do.
Right. Well, and it's even like, some of the things like when you talk about PDA, right? Like some of the things with my own child is very much when I ask them to do something, like for example, let's just say emptying the dishwasher. Um, what
Yeah.
I have found is that when I talk to them and communicated with them, one of the things that they've expressed to me is, well, mom, sometimes I need you to give me a reminder, but then like it can be helpful if you give me a reminder and then just let it be.
Mhm.
Because what'll happen is they'll say, in a minute, And we all know how that route goes, right?
Yeah, it's all about how
But
we
then
put it to them, isn't it?
but then if I remind them in, like, 10 minutes or 15 minutes, then it tends to go a lot better. Like, "Hey, like, did you have a chance?" Like, also how I word that is, like, rather than saying, "You haven't put the dishes away," be like, "Did you have a chance to go and put the dishes away yet?"
Mhm. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's all about, like, how we communicate
How
and
we
how
put
we
it to,
handle
yeah,
how we
yeah, I
handle
don't
our
disagree.
own.
If I
Yeah.
say to her, I mean, actually, when she does do the dishwasher, and I say, right, are you going to do? No, I'll always get a no, absolutely. But if I say, you know what, dishwasher's needing done, remember, so you're going to do it when do it when you're ready, or when do you think you want to do it, now or later? Let me know,
Mhm.
and let her decide. She'll do it. It's not a problem. But if I force the issue,
Yeah.
it's just going to no way. It's going to do it. I'm a bit like that myself, to be honest. If I'm going to do
Yeah,
something, my husband says go do it. I can't do it anymore.
I hate being told what to do.
Yeah.
I really do. I'm not the no, don't tell me how to live my life. Um, Repression never works. It took me a long time to understand my feelings and how to express them.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lila. That is absolutely true. Like, it never works. And like I've said so many times, it always comes out. It always
It
comes
usually
out.
comes worse. Mm-hmm.
And
When it comes down, it's going to get worse. Yeah.
I think for me personally, like, if I don't deal with my trauma, um, it it comes out in ways that's going to harm and possibly hurt people around me.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't wish to do that to people around me. So it is my responsibility to manage my trauma and the emotions around that in a way that does not harm the people around me.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. We take it out on those closest to us, don't we?
Yeah, we do. As a grown up foster adopted kid, I would like to thank you ladies for having this discussion. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. We certainly need more of these discussions, don't we, around the world?
Oh,
And
yes, we need to
they
have
are happening, but it's a slow process.
yeah. I really truly think that even, some foster parents could benefit from hearing this, and I know
We
that
have a huge
inside of
amount of foster parents come to the workshops. Yeah. And actually, the good thing is we're trying to get through to the social workers and the teachers because they don't understand this stuff. They're trying to tell adopters and the foster carers, and they don't know this. They're actually what's happened today. I spoke to a parent who's discovered this and starting to learn it, and she said, "I'm going to tell my social worker." So the parents and the carers are telling the social workers, "You need this information." It should be the other way around. It should be the professionals that should be knowing this, and they don't know it.
Mhm,
The parents know it, and the carers know it now first.
mhm. Well, then it's really, really, I think, significant when you can advocate for parenting in a way that isn't hitting your children physically, and it's not
Yeah,
invalidating your children, it's not gaslighting your children. It's not like in the case of, Jessica Mast, it's been over a year since she was brutally murdered by, like, 4 ex-Anabaptist Mennonites, and, there's so much work to be done and so much education that needs to happen, and I really think that just having these conversations and then the workshops that you do, it's a really good start. Oh, would you like to share with people what type of workshops you have available?
sure, yeah, yeah. Well, we offer a 4-hour workshop, which is sometimes in 2 sessions or 1 session, where we talk about the trauma lens and explain all about the difference it made for us when we started to use it and how we can do it. There's always a couple of free sessions on anyone can sign up to. We do them for small groups as well. People have us in and they get us to come and do them. But after a workshop, attendees are invited to join our closed support group where we have ongoing support to apply the trauma lens, and we put people onto all the information that we learned it from, which is the Post Institute, Brian Post in America. He is amazing. His teaching is fantastic. So even just Google the Post Institute, put it into YouTube. There's so much free content out there. And we have obviously our support group and our Facebook group. We have lots of content on there as well. But there's always free spaces. People just go into Eventbrite and sign up, come along. People are seeing big changes in our home, which is amazing. And as I'm saying, it's not just parents now that are coming, it's social workers, it's health workers, it's teachers.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing.
It
When I
is,
was
it is.
young, dinner time was the time to scold and punish for things that were done wrong throughout the day. That's one thing I tell myself I'll never do to my daughter.
Gosh, and that must be really triggering for you around dinner, around food. That must bring that,
Yeah.
up for you a lot, I'd imagine, as a negative thing. If you
Yeah,
wait till
like
dinner time and then, oh, the shaming and the, yeah.
I can
Oh,
totally relate to that in way too many ways.
mm. And dinner time should be a happy time of you all coming together, shouldn't it? To break bread together and as a
It
family.
it should be happy together where you're like you said, breaking bread together. You're having a wonderful coming together of family, but unfortunately for many of us, that wasn't necessarily the dinner time that we experienced growing up. Like I said, like there's the whole the mentality around break their wills when they're in a high chair. Um,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
old are babies in the high chair? Like seriously, like that's and you're you know they're
They're not
preaching
even
from the pulpit.
developmentally able to learn at
They're
that age, you know.
they're
Yeah.
preaching from the pulpit that you need to hit the babies in the high chair. So just that alone, let alone like reviewing all of the transgressions throughout the day at the dinner table, like that's really traumatic. That's
Yeah. And
yeah.
really, we would be saying, wow, how stressed were you today that that would happen? What was going on with you? What were you feeling? How different would that be?
That would be such a different conversation.
Yeah.
And hey,
We do,
look, like
we do around our dinner table 5 things we felt that day. Five, I keep going the wrong way. 5 things we felt there. Negative emotion and
5.
5 things we're grateful for, or five positive emotions. Not why or where or who caused them, just this is how I felt today. And it's just
Mhm.
nice to have someone witness that and go, wow, that's a lot for you today. Wow, and I wonder what happened. And if you want to elaborate, you can. And it's just a bit of a standing joke. My teenagers roll their eyes and they're going, oh, but they do it. They want to do it.
I think
And I
it's
get to
really
do it. We all do it.
I think it's really powerful and even just validating to be given this space where you're comfortable to voice your emotions, but then also to share gratitude together. That's amazing.
It's really powerful. And actually, when you ask an adult to do it, we talk about it. I said to my mum, well, come and join us. 5 things you feel. They cannot talk about negative emotion. It's so alien to them. And they'll say, I'm hungry, I'm tired, I've got a sore foot. And you're like, that's not a negative emotion. They can't do it because they've never done it. They were taught to push it away. It's really
Yeah,
interesting.
it really is. When you take people that have never learned, that have never,
Mhm.
yeah,
Even getting the emotion wheel up on your kitchen wall and going over every day and pointing out some of the emotions you felt. So many emotions on that that we don't use, that we don't talk about.
hmm and I think that people like our listener that's saying like I'll never do that to my daughter.
Mhm.
Um, I think that those are the kinds of people that are also facilitating even more change. It's more than just like one or two people. This is like a
Yeah,
movement of people who
yeah.
are advocating and educating for gentle parenting and trauma informed parenting
Yeah, just
and
different names for it,
parenting
isn't it? Same thing.
that
Yeah.
that respects the human rights of children,
Mhm. Mhm.
that
But
treats
even
them
for us
as
as parents, we don't want to be that way. It's not fun
mhm.
for us to be in a state of fear and control
Oh no.
either.
It's absolutely not. It's literally like it is not fun to feel like you're out of control and you're losing it, and so yeah.
Yeah. I
But
always felt like I was drowning most of my younger years when my kids were younger. Just felt like I was drowning every day and didn't know what to do. And I wish I'd known this years ago. How wonderful would that have been?
oh my goodness. If I'd have known everything I know now when I became a parent, oh my goodness, it would have
Mhm.
just been amazing.
Yeah. But
Just
we know it
just
now,
in
so.
Yeah, we know it now, and now we're working on sharing it with other people who may benefit from that, so that's one of the beautiful things. Um,
Yeah.
I wanna I wanna thank you very much for being here and for
No, thanks for
sharing,
having me.
and I was gonna say, like, if, like, there was any one final thing that you could say to anybody that's struggling as a parent, whether it's, like, postpartum depression or just past traumas or whatever the case may be, what would you say to them?
I always say that any we choose to stop and breathe is the best thing we can ever do. Absolutely. And as far as trauma informed parenting is just give it a try. There's nothing to lose. Just try it one time and see the difference that it can make. But breathe. That is the most powerful thing you can do.
Thank you so much.
No
That is
problem. Thank
really
you for having me.
powerful.
Lovely. I
I would
love talking about this stuff. So
I would also like to add that if you're struggling with depression, like as a new parent or all of that, like it's it's okay to have medical care for that. It's okay to go to therapy. It's okay to use medications if you need to manage your depression. You deserve to be healthy, happy, and whole, and your children do too. And we're working on changing this. We are change. Huh? I hope you all have a fantastic day. Thank you for listening, and I'll see y'all next time.